What has happened, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with my spoiler-free review for Strange Darling. Or it'll be spoiler-free initially, but it's gonna be actually be a very difficult movie to discuss because I have two goals with this review. I don't want to spoil anything because part of like the twists and turns of the movie are part of like the fun and the excitement and the feature attraction. But even saying that there are twists and turns is in its own way kind of a spoiler, because when I saw the trailer about a month ago, I was like, oh, this looks like, whatever. Like I just kind of forgot about it. Then a couple days ago, I started seeing some reviews where people were just losing their minds. And I don't want to be one of those people that oversells the movie or loses my mind and talks about how it's like, the best thriller of the summer, because then people are going to see it and they're going to walk out disappointed. And I almost feel like I need to say, stop watching this video right now and just trust me and go see it. Keep your expectations modest, and then hopefully you'll be happily surprised by the experience. But it's very tough to persuade somebody to go see a movie without telling them something. But you can't tell somebody anything about Strange Darling without kind of ruining the experience. So let me speak in like the broadest generalities possible initially, just so I won't be accused of fucking up the experience of Strange Darling for anybody else. But it was written and directed by JT Mollner. I've never heard of JT Mollner. I'll be watching his movies from here on out. He shot it on 35 millimeter. You see the grain, you see the eye-popping colors. It looks fucking stunning. More movies on film, please. It also stars Willa Fitzgerald, who I think her stock is going to skyrocket after this movie. I was aware of her from season 1 of Reacher, where she was Darling. And I was aware of her through Mike Flanagan's House of Usher show. I can't remember if he called it The Fall of the House of Usher or just Usher or House of Usher. It was a season of television named after the short story The Fall of the House of Usher. However, that season of television was basically an adaptation of like multiple Edgar Allan Poe short stories, and Willa Fitzgerald played the young version of one of the older characters in that show. And so that was all I knew her from, and I was a fan. I like her performances, but she really just steals the show in Strange Darling. She's fantastic. Like, once again, I got to be very careful in my in how I describe the story. Well, I'll go off the description from Wikipedia and IMDb. So on IMDb it says, nothing is what it seems when a twisted one-night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree. That's appropriately vague, but once again, even saying that's appropriately vague might be interpreted as a spoiler. And also, once this movie, once it reveals its hand, well then, like once the cat's out of the bag, it becomes a very different kind of movie, but that's going to sound like a discouragement. I actually did really enjoy this movie. Here's the premise as written over on Wikipedia. A cat and mouse thriller described as a dramatization of the last known months of a serial killer. Once again, nice and vague. So I should probably mention Willa Fitzgerald's co-star, Kyle Gallner, if I'm saying his name correctly. Interesting. The director's name is Mollner, and the male lead is Gallner. I don't know if that's some strange connection there. But we also have two aging luminaries, Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey. I've been watching them in movies my entire life, like for well over 40 years. It's always fantastic seeing aging names getting a chance to showcase their talents in a little thriller or a little horror movie. I guess it's not really a horror movie. It's a full-blown thriller. It's not an erotic thriller, although it has erotic ingredients, and I love erotic thrillers. I'll include a link in my description below to my top 10 1980s erotic thriller video, but I'm not going to sell this as an erotic thriller. It is a thrill ride. That is the best way to describe it. It's got a little sex appeal, a little comedy, some really cool music, lots of violence, car chases, all kinds of good stuff. It is a very enjoyable evening at the movies, and it's only 96 minutes long. But sadly, I only got to enjoy about 86 minutes of it because toward the end of the movie, and this is at the AMC Kips Bay here in New York, I noticed this like kind of distracting movement off to the side where this person kind of kept stepping into the theater, stepping out, stepping in, stepping out, and then I started hearing like a walkie-talkie sound. So anyway, I initially very politely said like, can you please shut your walkie-talkie off, blah, blah, blah. As it turned out, as an employee of the theater. And then they didn't move. They looked at me like I had 6 heads, like they couldn't understand what I was saying. And then like a few minutes later, once again, it's the climax of the film, and the walkie-talkie started going off again. And I completely went berserk. And I was like, get the fuck out of here, shut the fuck up, blah, blah, blah. But basically like the last 5 to 10 minutes of the movie are a total blur because I always resist losing my temper, because when I do lose my temper, I go totally psycho. Anyway, it's a character flaw. But once I'm pissed, it's like I'm so focused on what was pissing me off initially, my vision goes red, which is eerily reminiscent of some scenes from this movie, and I can't focus on anything. So I'm kind of vaguely aware of how the movie ended, but I was having a great time up until that fucker came in with his goddamn walkie-talkie, and who knows, like maybe he was just curious about the movie. Maybe I was just being a huge dick. But if during the climax of a really entertaining thriller you come in with a walkie-talkie with the volume on, well then bald-headed psychos like myself are going to have words with thee. But what else can I say without saying anything? I say this movie has some ingredients that you very rarely see in movies nowadays, like people smoking cigarettes in a sexy fashion while hanging out around like neon signs. Like there's something about the nightlife when you're drinking cheap booze and chain smoking cigarettes and maybe or maybe not snorting some things up your nose that you should not. Like there is a certain kind of like naughty, dangerous sex appeal to the movie that I found very inviting and very refreshing, because most movies these days are so chaste and so virginal and so hell-bent upon avoiding anything like, sinful in any way, shape, or form, because we live like in a PG-13 world. It was just very refreshing to see an R-rated thriller, because I grew up in the great heyday of R-rated thrillers. R-rated thrillers, they're inexpensive to make, and when the dice come up 7, well then you might make piles of cash. Like famously, Fatal Attraction in the late 80s, I think the budget was either $10 million or $12 million, and it ended up grossing something like $370 million worldwide. I mean, it's just like, it made as much money as like the GDP of a small country. And I don't think Strange Darling will make that kind of cash, but I do think it's going to be a late summer surprise. And I always love it when we have a late summer surprise, because Alien Romulus for me was a mixed bag. I enjoyed the look of it, but it wasn't necessarily the big thrill ride or like, the great horror experience that I was craving. But Strange Darling, because it was totally off my radar until a couple of days ago, I really had no preconceived notions, or like I didn't have any expectations for the movie to meet. So once again, the whole point of making this video is kind of defeating the whole purpose, because I want to push people to go see it without giving them any expectations of any kind, which maybe is an exercise in total futility. But I can say this, the movie absolutely hits the ground running, and I'd say it almost completely succeeds in not wearing out its welcome. I guess one of the most recurring complaints I hear about modern movies is that they're too goddamn long. Most people say, oh, the movie was fine, but oh my god, it was like a 2.5-hour movie with like 45 minutes of trailers and commercials, and with like the commute to and from the theater, it's like a 5-hour ordeal that kind of took up the whole day. That will not be the case with Strange Darling. It is just a mean and lean little genre film. And I feel like in the 70s and early 80s, they used to make a lot of these exploitation films in Australia. And obviously in America, we had our fair share of like drive-in movies and exploitation films as well. And so it's not like campy enough to be one of those kind of like grindhouse movies, or movies that are trying to replicate the grindhouse experience of the 1970s. And the look of the film is probably too polished to describe it as a grindhouse movie, and the acting is too good. Like most grindhouse movies, while they might be trying to deliver a genuine, sincere experience, just due to budgetary constraints or just inexperienced actors, sometimes it can be kind of a strange experience. Strange Darling, and it's funny, I keep wanting to call it Don't Worry Darling, that movie that Olivia Wilde directed a couple years ago. But yeah, I guess it's tough to recommend a movie if you can't even remember the name of the flick. Like when I walked up to the theater and they're like, what are you here to see? I was like, I have no idea, and I just kind of held up my my Fandango thing, and I was like, yeah. Anyway, they showed me the entrance, but Strange Darling, maybe that's one of my only real complaints about the movie, is that it's got a strange name that doesn't quite work, and it's got an ending that I think is gonna open it up to some criticism, but not enough where it's gonna break the movie. Once again, this is one of my big surprises of the summer. I love mean and nasty thrillers. I love movies that are kind of horror adjacent, and it's actually been a pretty surprising movie on that front, or been a pretty surprising season on that front, because I think while the big franchises, just like more often than not, suffer from a complete and total lack of any originality, if you're open to low-budget thrillers and low-budget horror films, you're going to see original stories all the time, like new franchises coming into being, or new stars. Like I said before, Willa Fitzgerald, her stock is going to go up after this, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if she books 5 to 10 years worth of work just based on her performance here, where she gets to present quite a landscape of conflicting emotions. But I think that's as far as I can go without offering any spoilers or any specifics. So this is my big verbal warning. And I don't know why I'm like tap dancing across all these laser beams, being so sensitive to the fact that Strange Darling is very spoiler dependent. But it's one of those things where it wouldn't surprise me if it is spoiled for some people that the movie's greatly diminished. All I knew going into it was that there were going to be surprises, and so that's all I'm going to tell you. There are surprises in this movie. The trailer gives you a little tease, but also a lot of people complain about trailers these days revealing too much. The trailer keeps all of its cards very close to its chest. So if you're tired of movies being overly long, And if you're tired of trailers revealing too much, and if you're tired of just big-ass, boring, bloated franchises like Ghostbusters, well then go see Strange Darling. It is the fun, late 2024 summer surprise that we've all been kind of waiting for and hoping for. I think it's better than Trap. I think it's better than Alien Romulus. What else have I seen this month? I guess the biggest surprise of this month was seeing Caligula in the theater. Yet another experience I was not expecting to have. So yeah, if you want to have a change of pace, go see Caligula or go see Strange Darling. But this is my last verbal spoiler warning, and now it's time to talk about one or two specifics. So I guess the first bit of praise I want to heap on Strange Darling is that it manages to feel like a modern movie without surrendering to or falling into the trap of kind of easy, predictable outcomes that you would expect from very prevalent narratives in 2024. Because if you watch the trailer and you see like a guy and a girl in a car, where the guy's a big burly guy with muscles, and the girl, Willa Fitzgerald, very slender, very small, and she's talking about like, are you a serial killer? Like, can I feel safe? That's the most important thing. Like, if a woman wants to have a one night stand, like, you're putting their life in their hands. Like, when you watch the trailer, you think, oh, clearly this is going to be a movie about a guy who goes on a murderous rampage and spends the whole movie chasing Willa Fitzgerald. And he does spend the whole movie chasing Willa Fitzgerald. But once you know the movie's going to have twists and turns, well, then you're kind of conditioned to expect, well, maybe she's a little crazy too, or maybe she's a little dangerous as well. And what makes the movie even more unpredictable is that it's told in several chapters, but the chapters are out of order. It starts off in the middle of like a car chase and a big shootout and like, big action scene, and then it's jumping around. And I won't say it kind of keeps you on your toes the entire movie, but it'll keep you on your toes for like the first third or the first half. And then once like it reveals like everything that's inside of its bag of tricks, from that point on, it's just like, well, who's going to live, who's going to die, and how much collateral damage will there be along the way? And that's also part of the fun, because like this is an environment where there are a lot of like mountain people or people who are interested in Sasquatch, and like everybody seems to be armed. Like this is the most heavily armed community you could possibly imagine, where everybody seems to have badass cars and shotguns and revolvers and that sort of thing. So it's just an area full of sex and cigarettes and neon and danger and that sort of thing, which is exactly what you want from an exploitation film. You want an exploitation film never to feel like work, never to feel like a lecture, never to feel like a sermon. You want it to feel like fun and excitement and thrills. And I think that's why I'm so enthusiastic about Strange Darling, is that it delivers on the number one thing that an exploitation or grindhouse film or just a low-budget genre film should deliver: entertainment. It is an entertaining movie. And I think part of the secret sauce is that the movie never takes itself too seriously. And I think that's one of the reasons why I misjudged it initially. When I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, this is one of those movies that's going to give us a lecture, take itself too seriously. It's going to feel like a sermon. And I was happily surprised. And I never was I more happy to be wrong. But what I really enjoyed was how the movie was willing to go into some very strange, dangerous, unpredictable sexual terrain, where people who like to be choked or like to use safe words or like to do role playing that may or may not involve violence, where it might traumatize the people involved, but that's what they're looking for. Like they're looking to be horrified, they're looking to be stimulated, like they're looking to get interested through violence, and so they're always looking for people that might help them kind of like push those buttons. And that's almost never explored in movies, especially in modern movies, which I feel like are so celibate and so chaste and so angelic. Like nobody has sex in modern movies. Babies just come into being just from magic, from people sprinkling magic pixie dust and that sort of thing. Like there's this new thing going on in movies where people never kiss or hug anymore. They just touch foreheads together. I'm like, who does that? Like, maybe if I've just finished a race with somebody and we're tired and we want to just congratulate them, like, oh, hey, good job. Like, then you can touch foreheads. But I like it when people are attracted to each other. Like, look back at movies like The Big Sleep from the 1940s. Like in the 1940s, they're not known or not famous for their sex scenes, but they're famous for their sexual tension. Like Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart in silhouette, lighting each other's cigarettes. Then they place the cigarettes side by side in the ashtray and the credits roll. It's like, oh, this is Sex in 1946. You can't show Bogey and Bacall boning, but you can imply that they want to, and that kind of sexual tension makes it very fun. People love to see movie stars falling in and out of love and enjoying sexual tension. But Strange Darling, it's a full-blown one-night stand where somebody is going to kill or attack or do something horrible to the other. We're just not quite sure who, because there seem to be knives and guns and drugs and booze all over the place. It's a very combustive situation. And then once it goes to the dark side, yeah, it gets really sleazy and really fun really quickly. And none of it would have worked if Willa Fitzgerald wasn't willing to be so psycho and so vulnerable all at once. She spends like half the movie running around in her bra and panties, committing horrible acts of violence, and it's just a fucking blast watching her in action. And just to shower her with a little additional praise, it's nice to see an actress where they can go to the dark side and be like vulnerable and psycho and sexy and dangerous and all these things without taking themselves too seriously. There's a sense of humor that's running throughout this where, without it ever feeling tongue-in-cheek or campy or kind of laughing at itself, it will kind of let a little pressure out of the balloon so you can kind of relax and exhale. Like there's an incredible score running throughout the film, and if you watch the trailer, there's a modern day version of Love Hurts by Roy Orbison that's featured prominently throughout the movie. But at one point, I can't remember when she says it, but they're covered in blood and they've been like stabbing and fighting and chasing for a while. And she's like, "This is gonna be our song," and I just like exploded with laughter. That's my kind of humor. And so JT Mollner, like I said before, he's a filmmaker I'll be paying close attention to moving forward. I'm looking at his IMDb right now, and I don't think I've seen a single thing that he's ever been a part of. He's directed a handful of shorts, or actually a lot of shorts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 shorts before his feature film debut, Outlaws and Angels, in 2016, which I did not see. But maybe that's why this film feels so confident and so I guess, like complete, because he got a lot of practice making short films. I feel like filmmakers need to practice, whether that's through commercials or music videos or short films, and obviously he's done his time in the trenches. But also, actors need cool opportunities. I think the biggest problem facing most actors is a shortage of great material and a shortage of great directors that can showcase their talents, and it puts them in this strange position. Like, do you want to work steadily? Do you want to make money? Or do you want to be exposed? Or do you want to wait for like those good roles to come along, because nobody stays young forever? And it's kind of like a fighter waiting for that big fight. And if you bide your time too long, well, then the window might be lost. And I think it's why you see so many actresses like Emma Stone basically hitching their wagon to a director like Yorgos Lanthimos and making multiple movies in a row with them, because they reckon it's all right. It's so hard to find a good filmmaker and or good material. Now that I found one, let's just crank out an entire series of movies. And I always recommend that actors take their destiny into their own hands, either as their own producer or learn to write themselves. Like, their history, I wouldn't say it's littered with great actor-directors, but there are a few. Like, Orson Welles was an actor who could also direct movies, and John Cassavetes was an actor who could also direct movies. And I would argue that they were both better as directors than they were as actors, even if I liked them both quite a bit as actors. And I always recommend the same thing to every actor out there. Don't spend your time going to casting calls and auditions and all that stuff. Like, don't spend your whole time waiting for your big opportunity. Create your own opportunities. And I have no idea if Willa Fitzgerald was involved in any way, shape, or form as like a producer or a creative on Strange Darling. But my advice to her would be, give JT Mollner a call and say, "What do you got cooking in the oven? What can we do next?" But one final point, I guess it was just very refreshing to see a movie not take the easy way out or the obvious route that was suggested by the trailer. That's probably why I initially misjudged the film. I was like, oh, this guy's going to be a serial killer and a rapist, and she's going to spend the whole movie running from him. Like, been there, done that, bought the T-shirt. And I just saw a movie more or less exactly like that last night. I saw that new movie, Blink Twice, directed by Zoe Kravitz, where you have a bunch of eccentric, like middle-aged white male billionaires who take girls to a private island, try to do horrible things to them, and then the girls have to fight for their lives. And it was so bland and so predictable, I couldn't even bother to review it because it wasn't a bad movie. It was beautifully shot and has good actors in it. But it just, and that movie has a lot of problems, and I don't want to turn my Strange Darling video into a Blink Twice video. But it just, it took the easy way out. Strange Darling did not, and so I just applaud it for being a mean and lean, surprising, sexy, entertaining, humorous, exciting, violent movie shot on film, and I'm sure it was shot for practically nothing. Let's see if Wikipedia has the budget. It does not. If this movie was shot for more than like $1 or $2 million, I would be shocked and amazed. So I just hope that it'll find the audience that will enjoy it. It premiered at Fantastic Fest in Austin last fall, and I think it made a decent splash, and it's gotten some good reviews. So I feel like at this time of year, everybody's basically saying to themselves, the summer movie season is over. The summer movie season is not over. There is one late summer surprise that I highly recommend people seeing. But once again, do your best to forget every bit of praise that I showered upon the movie, because if you go into it thinking, oh, this is going to be this fucking killer thriller, well, then you probably won't be that into it. But I think at this point I'm repeating myself. It's time to wrap this sucker up. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, share, all that good stuff, and like the video. And if you want to talk more, hunt me down on Twitter at Colbrax. But hope everybody has a great weekend at the movies, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.